So those lights.
We don't get much public comment.
Usually we flip these right there.
Oh, isn't that nice?
I got you.
Yeah, no, just if you guys want to just go up and talk together. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's just not the lights.
And those are rare birds.
So all the other lights.
They're rare for Boulder County. They're called snowy egrets. Snowy egrets. Snowy egrets. Snowy, and the whole family.
They're at the tree.
They're young.
I made a logo and made it.
But it's practice, yeah.
Like that.
That's how I do it.
Let's go. That's good stuff. They really came out. Wow. I think it was a much.
Oh, they ate it. I know. Well, that's okay. The frogs didn't mind it.
Yeah, Kevin, this room. Yeah, right there, right over here. Come over here. Piece of cake. Should we all wear all hats?
I don't know, is that, it might be a little weird, but I don't know, I like it. I think it looks good. No, we do, you do. Yep. Are added to our agenda that are new for all the committees that we will be adopting at each meeting. We normally do a roll call, so we're just going to do our normal roll call. So we'll just go down the line and introduce yourselves. So Ryan Welch, Vice Chair of OSAC. And just go this way.
Mark C. Strass, member.
Joel White, committee member.
Tracy Collar, member.
John, thanks.
Sean Samuelson, member.
Vanessa Hetzel, member.
Kevin France, member.
Allison James, staff liaison.
All right, thank you. And our normal board member, Mark, said he had a conflict tonight.
And Trustee Hammerly should be coming in his place shortly.
Okay, great, thank you. The other new item is an agenda approval. So normally we would do this at the end of our meeting where we would say, are there any other topics? Now the procedure will be to review the agenda. If there's anything you would like added or removed before we get into the agenda, we'll make motions and we will amend the agenda, which then goes up on the website as an amended agenda, and then we'll work through those. But what that does mean is that we can't at the end say, I'd like to bring up one more topic and work through it at the end. If that's the case, we'll just collect those up and work through them at the next meeting. So with that being said, are there any corrections to the agenda? Sean?
Yes, I would like to add on to the agenda the Open Space Committee stance on Town 15, our formal stance, discussion about that.
Okay, any other? So we'll do this formally. So I'll make a motion, then we will add a discussion topic. And we will add it ahead of, I think we'll do it right ahead of number 6 to discuss our official stance on Town 15. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay. Good. So we've got that out of the way. So
I have a couple as well.
Oh, okay.
So I don't see Shan Shan on this agenda. Am I missing it? It's right here.
It's under 11,
It's under
11 triple I. 11
Yep,
triple I.
okay, good. And then I had some follow-up on Trust for Public Land, and I don't see that.
Yeah, that didn't make the agenda.
So that's just questions for Allison and follow up on last month. So does that need to be added then as an addendum agenda?
I think maybe what we should do is add that as a standing item each
so
week.
too.
Mm-hmm.
So I will make a motion that we add we'll add Trust for Public Land as a standing item in our monthly agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, it passes. So we will add that to standing updates.
Okay, great. That's all I had.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. Any others? Okay. Now we're on to public comment. So come on up, say your name, give us your name and address, and glad we have some public comment. So I have at it.
I hope it'll be awesome. My name is Peter Ruprecht. I live at 185 Mohawk Circle, and I have a couple of items for your attention tonight. First is sort of a lead-in for the new agenda item regarding Town 15. I wanted to talk about it, put some ideas out for you guys to consider if you haven't already. And of course, I definitely appreciate that there are a lot of possible ways that the town might use that land in the future. But since you all are OSAC, I would advocate that it be retained as open space. And in particular, I'd like it to be kept as natural open space. And to be even more specific, I think it would be great for it to undergo a restoration to natural prairie, and in particular, to focus on providing exceptional wildlife habitat. So to me, this means choosing, in addition to just native grasses, plants like chokecherry, sunflower, rabbit brush, and so forth, to provide food for a variety of birds. Ones like American plum, sumac, winter fat, currant, and so forth, to feed and shelter mammals. And let's not forget lots of flowering plants to attract insects, especially butterflies and other pollinators, and hummingbirds. I know a project like this, taking on something like that, would be expensive and especially labor intensive. But I think that possible partnerships with Colorado Native Plant Society, Urban Prairies projects, and so forth, could help get us off on a right foot with that. Enlisting resident volunteers, Eagle Scouts, and so forth could probably help with planting and maintenance. And the whole 15 acres wouldn't all have to be done at once. I guess I could envision seeing a nature trail with interpretive signing winding through this, connecting with the adjacent open space along the Rock Creek riparian corridor, and so forth. Anyway, that's a possibility or a vision for you all to consider. My second item tonight is regarding the Hodgson-Harris Reservoir breeding bird study. And since my colleague Kathy is also going to be speaking about that, to avoid us swapping back and forth, I would like to give the rest of my time to her to get started on that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time and the suggestions. Appreciate it.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Carty-Mullen. I live at 1250 South Boyero Court. And I love nature just like all of you, so it's really nice to be here with like-minded people. And I'm here to share more about the Hodgson-Harris Reservoir. And I just don't know if all of you realize this, but in 2011, the town of Superior and Boulder County Open Space agreed to pay $2.2 million to restore the 130-year-old dam that was breaking down and to protect the reservoir and its wildlife. So they did this, and this reservoir is the home and is in the migration zone for over 130 different bird species, some very rare. So why did we do a breeding bird study? In front of you, you have a study, and it looks like this. We also sent it to you electronically.
Did I take care?
No, not yet. So, but when you document breeding birds, you really zero in on what you've got there, okay? You've zero in on whether they have water, food, habitat for their nests and for raising their young, as well as some place to hide and be protected from predators. So, but when you have that breeding bird, you have a successful habitat, and it's a continuation of that species. So you have happy birds. So that's why we do this thing called the breeding bird study every year, and we're charting the viability and the growing diversity of the wildlife and the birds out on the HHR. And this study can be used to validate the town's intergovernmental agreement with the Boulder County Open Space to help protect that and to continue to be good stewards of the HHR. So that's my lead-in. So tonight I'm here with Peter, and we're going to present the overview of this year's study, along with, it's kind of combined. Sometimes you'll hear us say it's a double study from last year and this year because it was some of the same people. So the primary goals, and this study, by the way, was spearheaded by Susan Bauer and Steve Jones. And so the primary goals of the study were to generate a comprehensive list of what the heck is out there. It's like a list of the potential and confirmed nesting birds, and to evaluate and map their nesting and foraging habitat. And that's going to be listed with Boulder, with the state, and with the federal government on their species of concern lists, as well as to name management strategies to enhance the nesting and migratory habitat. The charts that you see on pages 10 through 13 list the observations of the breeding birds. So, and you'll see lots of columns, and you'll see, N for nesting, or you may see C for courting, hatching eggs. And what we did was there were a bunch of us that went out there, and we had binoculars, and we'd sit and we'd spend time out there, and we would watch for these, and we would record them. And sometimes they were feeding their young, and Peter here worked extensively on these charts, so he's got them really down. If you have questions, you should need to ask him. Steve Jones, who presented to the board 2 nights ago, is a breeding bird specialist. He's in Boulder. He goes all over the country. He's written 7 books on birds. He is the one that really spearheaded this with Susan Bauer, that said, let's find out what's out there. Let's find out what we've got and how valuable the site is. Well, it's just rich with all kinds of wildlife, and especially birds, and this study documents it. And I'm just going to top line it for you. He says it's really, really unique. In the past 2 years, Steve trained dozens of us, 24 volunteers, who then documented 484 hours of observation out there. We found 132 species, including some very rare birds. The snowy egret, which is on your cover here, okay, is one of those rare birds that you don't really see around here very often. And if you see, there's a frog in the mouth, and the 2 that are on the side, to the side of it, are babies, even though they're full grown, and they're looking like, okay, now what do I do with that? So the mama hands it to the next one drops it in the water, the mama comes over, and Papa comes over and gives it back to him, and then it gives it to the next one, and it was just a real sight. We have pictures of these that are taken in a series, but this is kind of like the best shot. And it's just so fun because it just really recharges your soul when you're out there and in nature. So that was really neat. Many of these birds that are on their migration path benefit from the food that they get out there. And it's a remarkable reservoir that helps them on their way north. The HHR is located within a migratory fly zone, and it's an outstanding local resource for naturalists and bird watchers like you. And thanks to Sean, where's Sean? There he is. He responded to the report yesterday and said how delighted he was that there were a number of other bodies of water surrounding the HHR. So if you go to page 6, you'll see the map that he's referring to. And you'll see HHR looks pretty small, but it is 19 acre square feet. And it's at the top of your chart. And you can see the other bodies of water that are the dark parts. But this is the fly zone. So the birds will fly over these bodies of water and stop when they need to, kind of like a 7-Eleven or a Wawa or whatever you need to, to get your coffee in the morning. But they needed to get their food and their sustenance to continue on their migration. So this report shows why this reservoir is so unique. 3 things came out of the study. The Hodgkin-Harris Reservoir supplies a real diversity of waterfowl and shorebirds. Steve said, I think there's a lot to eat in that lake. He said that there are more birds at the HHR than he's seen at the Boulder Reservoir for the past 20 years. That's pretty astounding, because Boulder Reservoir is pretty big. He says, we're getting species out here that they don't get there. That's pretty neat. And the second thing was that the HHR supports nesting of species that are declining in Boulder, like the American avocets. So Tracy, would you mind dimming the lights? These are the avocets. Aren't they gorgeous? They have big, long, beautiful necks when they're sitting up. This is one of 4 nests from last year that unfortunately got wiped out by the floods and by the raising water that the county raised prematurely, and it flooded them out. But they came back this year, and flooded out again. So we're here to really help encourage you to encourage the board to make sure you stay on the county about not doing that again, because these birds are very rare in Boulder, especially the nesting ones. Our reservoir is one of the only reservoirs that has the nesting pairs. So it's, it's kind of up to us. You can just leave that off. And the other thing is the blue-winged teals. I don't have a picture with me tonight, but I'll be back with more pictures now that I know that you can show them. It's much better to watch them than me. The blue-winged teals nest in the grasses on the north of Zaharias and on the north side by Zaharias. And these are species that are not thriving anywhere else in Boulder. So the HHR is our best resource for these two sets of birds. The last thing is it's a fabulous community resource for viewing and appreciating birds and other wildlife. It supports the diversity of wildlife better than any other place in Superior. Mammals like the white-tailed deer have been seen there both years. Native mink that were almost wiped out last century have been out there. So it goes to show you that the reservoir is thriving and the ecosystem continues to grow to support these. So Steve's recommendation, as well as what we have here, is moving forward, how do we support this natural park? So there are two things. One is, if the Zaharias property is altered in any way, it would be advisable to have a grass buffer on the north side of the water to protect the nesting ducks and shorebirds. He says most of the studies that he's seen suggest at least a 50-meter buffer that should be native grasses, and it should be fenced so there's no pets, no people, no trails. It's just totally protected. And the town would then better maintain the nesting habitat for these ducks. And the second thing is the town asked the county to do an environmental study out there. Well, they did it, and they recommended filling the water slowly, but they didn't follow their own mandate. And unfortunately, it flooded, and I don't know what's going on out there, but we need to find out so that it doesn't wipe out the nests again. What happened was it wiped out these poor avocets 2 years in a row. And in the past 2 years, he said we lost 6 avocet nests out here. And we're lucky to have in all of Boulder 6 nests anywhere. And so this is kind of like a big special place. They really like it. It's like a Club Med for avocets, because of the mud flats. And when they raise the water, those mud flats just go right underwater. So we hope that you'll help to hold the county, or the board will help to hold the county accountable. So next time, I want to tell you some more stories about the pie-billed grebe, who did have a success, and they are, let's see if I can get this to work right. They are these really cute little squatty ducks. They're about this big. They're small. They dive. They have a white bill with a black stripe through it. And they got wiped out twice last year, once this year, and they came back. They're very persistent and had 4 hatchlings. And this is a shot of them with 2, which is amazing because they're always underwater, or they're underwater as much as they are on top of the water. And so there's this fun story that I'll have to tell you about those. So I just want to ask if you have any questions. Okay.
I do.
Okay.
So the second thing that you mentioned that Steve said about how there's more species here than at the Boulder Res, very briefly, do you know why?
No, but I'm guessing the people out there have something to do with it, and the motorboats and the churning, that smell in the water. It probably doesn't really bode well for the grasses, but I can find out and let you know what he said.
I guess I wonder
that's pretty.
More actually the other way around, what specifically about the reservoir area makes it special, makes it Club Med, makes it...
What Club Med?
Yeah.
You haven't seen the little cocktails?
Makes it special, makes it attractive to the species.
You'll have to ask the ducks and the birds. We're guessing that it's because there's not a lot of interference with them right now. There's nothing on the north side. They're protected. And they have a lot of food in there because there's no fishing either. There's a nice cattail marsh coming in, so there's a lot of crayfish in there and a lot of frogs. Do you have anything? And so I know they don't stock it.
The other thing I'll mention is in the county's ecological report they talked about this, and it's actually on our website, so you don't have to read the whole thing, but if you read it at the end, they talk about the specific reasons why it's a pretty unique habitat. And I forget how they worded it, but something with the way that the water draws down and it's fairly shallow, the mud flats and what can grow in there make it an interesting environment.
It's definitely frequented. I highly recommend that you, Sandy really helped to get a picnic table out there on the corner of Shamrock and 88th. And so you can just pull in and park there, have a little picnic, take your coffee, sit there and watch, take your binoculars and see what's going on out there anytime, which is great. So, oh, yes. And we are going to plan a tour of some kind. We don't have it figured out yet, but we'll be back. And we would like to invite all of you and your families to go out there and just experience it for yourself. And we want to thank you for being advocates for nature and our open space.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to commend you on the report because I know nothing about the reservoir, and I learned so much, and it shows that a lot of work went into this. Is this going to be online somewhere or available to other people?
Well, we can make that happen.
I
Can
think
we put it on your website, maybe? Or
Is that
town,
something?
what-
I don't know.
what do you think,
if we
Sandy?
could.
where would be the best place to put that?
I don't know, but I would charge Allison with figuring it out.
You know, where
think it
people
belongs
find it
Because I think that's a
somewhere.
great suggestion. This
it
is,
belongs somewhere.
most people don't know about this,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we got it on Monday, and it's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's totally fabulous.
Yeah, Sandy's been out there on a tour, and what did you take away from it when you were out there? Did you see
That I
anything?
wished I lived in Saddlebrook so I could watch it every day. Because it really was fascinating, fascinating.
And it would be nice to have an area where people and others that didn't live in Saddlebrook could access it in a way that we could protect the habitat. Maybe sometime in the future have a trail somewhere. So, thank you.
So Kathy, I have one question as
Oh,
well.
sure.
So we also have the nearby Autry Reservoir.
Yes.
That is undergoing some development. Has any similar studies been done over there to see if similar wildlife was occurring or if there's some kind of symbiotic relationship?
Interesting that you should ask that because Vanessa is in charge of the what are they? Raptor program. So we're going to be watching. I mean, Peter and I, and there's another fellow, Jeff, that lives over in Bell Flatirons. We watched in the trees. We've been watching for years the nest, the owls and the gray horned owls and the red-tailed hawk nest. But I go down there and look at the water with my binoculars, but I have never taken tally.
We just reviewed that property because they're planning to develop it, and I wish we had had a little more information, like the 50 meters of grass buffer, et cetera.
Right.
Because that might have been helpful with our recommendation at our last meeting if we had a similar body
Right.
of evidence. Just would have been nice. I didn't know if you guys had done anything like that for that reservoir as well, though.
I'm not aware of any. Are you?
I think Audubon did, but it was years in the past.
Yeah, we could find out and get back to you. What are they going to build?
Apartments, or is it apartments or townhomes?
Condos.
Condos.
Where?
All
Just-
around the
You know
south
where
side
they're
of
already
it.
fixing up the other side of the reservoir there? They put in roads and all the infrastructure. That's all gonna
The entire south side.
pop up.
No.
Yep.
At least that's their proposal.
Well,
Actually, has that been approved? Or is that still in the planning stages?
I apologize, I didn't hear what you were talking about.
The development along Autry Reservoir?
It has been
Superior
approved.
Shores? Okay,
It was
so it's already
approved
been-
at the last,
Okay.
at the,
so does that
Two
mean
board
your
meetings-
disc golf
two board
course
meetings
is going to
ago.
be gone?
The what?
Is the disc golf course going to be gone?
No, it's on
No.
it's between Colton and, I forget the turnoff there to like,
it's actually in the vacant parcel of land that's between Bell Flatirons and the mall. So it's on this side of Autry Reservoir.
Yeah.
Pond, whatever you call that
Okay.
thing.
Thank you.
Kathy, I have one more question, if you don't mind. Again, I'd like to say that, well done on this. I look forward to getting into it, but I can already appreciate the amount of work that's gone into it. So thank you for doing that. Certainly appreciate that. My question is around, you said the last 2 years that Boulder County has raised the level of the lake?
Yes.
And is that
It's
through
the
irrigation
agricultural people
canals,
there.
or-
Yeah, it's the hydrology people. I don't know why. I've been asking, and so has Susan Bauer, you know, why. And I believe, do you know who Susan Spalding is?
yes.
Yeah, Susan Spalding is on it, and she was frustrated too. But the problem is there's pumpkin farmers down below. So they have the agreement with that water source goes to feed the water to the pumpkin farms. And they get, I understand, they get so much pressure from the state to fill it, as well as from other interest groups. So it's a balance. It's like a balance. It's a battle and a balance of nature. You know, how do you find that balance? And so hopefully if they do fill it, because it's really full right now, they could do it after the nesting season. And the fledglings have, you know, are self-sufficient.
Yeah, but it is a man-controlled raising and lowering of the level,
Yes,
correct?
but 2 years in a row, the second week or the first or second week in May, we had a lot of water. We had 4 days of snow in 2017 and then a big runoff. So the combination of the water raising from the hydrologist as well as nature didn't help. And then this year, the same thing happened. We had 1 or 2 days of rain at the same time, and it just took it right on up.
Yeah.
And so if we can help, that will help some of these species, you know, find it more like a Club Med and not drowned out.
And you said your contact in Boulder is working on that process?
Susan Spalding is the head wildlife biologist on Boulder County Open Space, and she is very aware of it. And so is Steve Jones, who is the person, he and Susan Bauer really put together the bulk of this last year, and we added on to it and, you know, added our contributions, but they're really the key people. So if you have questions, they have their emails on the front of it, and you can ask them directly. But that's your best bet.
Okay. And so Sandy, the board got all of this information, got the same study, right?
We did.
Okay. Do we want to?
Speaking of which, to reserve resources, because we're going to go to ProStack and to POSAC in Boulder, if you can get by with your electronic copy, I'd love to recollect these and reuse them for them.
Sure.
And I'll
Thank
leave
you.
one for Ken. You want to just keep that?
Yeah, I'll keep that for Ken. Yeah, certainly.
Oh, well, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for all the effort. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's an impressive body of work.
Ryan, do we want to talk about their recommendations at all, or do you want to do that later when we talk about Hodgkin Harris after 76th
I
Street?
think we might need to think about this one and put it on next month to talk about what we want to do.
Okay.
But it may fit into 5C, so. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so moving on to discussion of properties. This was a follow-on from last month when we were talking specifically about these 3 different properties. I was planning to have my notes, my computer died, so you may have to help me out, remember exactly what we were going to discuss here. So 3rd Avenue, we looked at those 2 properties that were, one's for sale for development over there, and then there was a piece behind it, and it had a name, Tract 919, that we were interested in talking about. I don't think we took it any further than that we were going to monitor the situation and see what we thought. Sean put together some details on what that looks like on the map. It kind of goes into one of our updates, but I updated the trail continuity document and added that property in there because what we've been toying with is could that, you know, with that and a few other pieces of property and the potential development of the Rogers property, extend the Coal Creek Trail along the trail, or the trail along the creek rather than looping around or going through Rogers and skirting around. And I think we're pretty far from knowing if that's even feasible. I mean, we'd have to work through what's possible through the creek and the floodplains and all of that. So I don't know what other discussion we should have on that, but that's where we're sitting on that one.
I do have the notes from last month,
Okay.
if you wanted me to read off what the
Yeah,
group
if you would,
discussed.
please.
The area has recently been cleared of structures by the landowner. Some of the land is for sale, quite a bit more expensive than we have experienced in the past. 2 parcels, one in front next to 3rd Avenue, other is behind with the creek called Tract 919. One in front is only for sale. We will have creek access and other open space soon with Parks 1 and 2, and potentially when Rogers Farm is developed. Discuss this could potentially enable a trail along the creek with Tract 919, and we should watch this property.
Okay. Yeah, so Track 919, I did some investigation on my own, not as an OSAC member, on my own to see what the status of that was. The current owners that are selling the front, which has been subdivided into 7 parcels, were not at this point in time selling the back parcel that bordered the creek. There are 2 additional privately owned parcels besides the Rogers Farm property that's owned by Rock Creek, or RCC or whatever they're called, that we would have to negotiate with if we were going to put a trail basically through their properties along the creek. But one of them was actually another vacant parcel of land, and the other was, I think it's rented out. So my suggestion is similar to what we're doing with 76th Street Properties, is to be, if we're considering doing this, instead of just sitting on it and waiting and watching, I suggest that we actually are proactive and reach out to the owners of that parcel of land, see what they might be willing to sell it for, just to get an idea. And then based on that, bring it back to this committee, potentially reach out to the TPL folks and see what is feasible, if it's reasonable or not. And then of course, there's always the hurdles of getting the adjacent properties to buy into this creek trail. But I think adding that kind of feature to the town, going so that you would have basically a creek trail that would not only go up the hill, but also along the creek, that would connect both Superior Marketplace to downtown, and then also to the open space. I think it'd be a great enhancement to this town, and similar to Boulder that has their creek walk. I think it's worth pursuing more proactively than just sitting and watching and waiting. So I don't know if we want to put a motion together to say we would like to proceed with investigating that officially, asking, I don't know if that's something we would ask staff to do, to reach out to the current owners to see what their stance is officially.
I have a question on that. Is it correct that parcel was sold in 2016 for about $1 million? Is that section?
Yes, both the back half, so it's 2 parcels. The front half got subdivided into 7. The back half is in a floodplain area, so I'm guessing that's partly why they're not looking to sell it.
Right.
They might actually be amenable to just leaving it as open space or selling it to the town or whatever.
Right, so it could be something that Trust for Public Land could do, and make that initial reach out if the town staff was on board with that, or obviously something that town staff could do. What are your thoughts on that, Allison?
So we'd have to bring it
given the
in front of
cost.
the board first though, right? I think,
Well,
to get approval.
Direction.
So one thought I had though is, are we missing a step that we should be investigating, whether there's other reasons why a trail wouldn't be feasible through there?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I don't know how, would we just ask town staff to look at it and you guys understand through Parks 1 and 2 what was required to build trail through a floodplain. I mean, if you came back and said it would be incredibly expensive because of the slope or because of the floodplain, it seems, I mean, I love the idea. I think a trail, I've always thought a trail, you come up the trail so far and then you get there and you got to loop around. It always seemed like a natural connection would be amazing through there. I just don't want to, I'd hate to buy it and then know that, and then find out later that we can't.
Are we talking the trail would be on the north side or the
North side.
south side?
North side.
North side of the creek.
Do we have
Doesn't have, no, part of it would be on the south, could be on the south side.
Well, once you get past Second Avenue, you could transfer over to the south side potentially, but it would mostly be on the north side, mainly because you wouldn't have to, so you'd be going through Rogers Farm on the north side, through,
Oh, wait, that's
two
the south
private
side.
properties.
That's the south side.
No, they actually own the land on the north side too, of the creek. If you look at the Boulder County property line
The
thing.
park, right here?
Grasso Park.
No, 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 just past that,
Oh,
just past
okay.
that, just past that. So we got the town property, followed by Rogers Farm, which is on the north side, followed by the Arsenault property after that, followed by the
And then there's
rental
two
property,
properties.
and then track 919.
Yeah, Ryan, I kind of had a similar thought when we were kind of talking through this. I too like the idea a lot. My other concern was, what are the residents on the other side of that creek going to say about this? I mean, I thought about when we talked about the trail that led off McCaslin to El Dorado, and it kind of went through that area. We got a lot of don't do that from the people that lived right there because they didn't want a trail going through their backyard. I kind of wonder if we would find the same thing. Now, the only way to know is we would have to ask, right? But kind of to your point, is this something we should do as due diligence before we get too far down the road to see if it's feasible?
I wonder if we should think about potential trail alignments so we know even who to ask and have maybe two options for what, talk about crossing back from the north to the south side. Because I don't have a good sense in my head where this ultimately goes.
Yeah, Joel, when I looked at the map, I think it impacts fewer people than it did on that El Dorado, or that other trail, I know the one you're talking about. And there's one property that would go through that the dwelling on the property is in the far corner. So it would be, it actually looks like it's pretty doable and pretty far away from most structures. So it seems, I'd say, possible.
So, all right, so, and actually I should probably bring up, is that bookmark somewhere else?
I know, just type BOCO and see if it comes up.
BOCO property.
Yeah.
Oops, there it is, boom.
If you want to do the satellite view too on the map, that might help.
Yeah, okay. Oh gosh, of course, my head's right in the way. Bring that down. Scroll in. Okay, so, looking up here. So, coming across on the north side, this is all town-owned right here. This is Rogers property owned here, and let's see. Yeah, that's Rogers Farm on the north side. And then this is owned by this McNulty Property LLC. This is, I think, town-owned here, and then this is owned by Arsenault, which is Superior Preservation LLC. And then coming down here is Track 919. So there's essentially Rogers Farm and then three other properties. So to Joel's point, the closest properties that have things on it that might be a problem for people living nearby is this one property here. But everyone else is, I think, and then I'm going to switch to where's the satellite? There we go. Everyone else is fairly far away. Again, this is town, Grasso Park. This property is a little far away. Now, they might have a problem if that's a rental property having a busy trail going through their backyard. I don't know. But that has the best, there's only one house there. And then everything else is pretty clear the rest of the way.
What kind of got me thinking about this is I was riding down Second Avenue one day on my way home, and there's, right as you get to the creek, there is a sign that is no creek access, private property, keep out. And so
that's because it's Rogers Farm. That is.
Oh, I'm talking on the other side, on the west side of Second. Yeah. So right there at the creek, there's a sign that basically says, don't come in here. And so that's kind of what I started thinking about was, are they going to be okay with backyard traffic? And maybe that doesn't matter. I don't know, but I thought it's something we should
We'd have to
consider.
work out something with that landowner. I mean, we'd be building a trail on their land.
So
So
maybe
we
if
have to
there's like a
figure-
small easement and then fenced across where that goes. Again, these are
Yeah.
smaller details.
Absolutely.
But in the larger scheme of things, there's really, Rogers Farm, which is being developed, this property, which is vacant. Actually, the property next to it is also vacant. But if we keep tight to the creek, and again, depending on floodplain stuff, we could potentially develop a pretty easy way to get all the way out, and again, skipping a little further out along the creek. This turns into a town of Superior and Boulder County open space, which we could potentially either come down along the creek here to hit the Mayhoffer Trail, or we could continue across the backside over here and then come across where there is currently a trail from that, was it Coal Creek Crossing?
Yes.
That comes down here into Mayhoffer. So there's different ways you can go from there, but I think those, again, track 919 is a big part of it, and then the McNulty property is another big part. I don't know about Arsenault too much.
Yeah,
I just
I mean,
know that this big open space out here was donated as open space by the Arsenault family.
Yeah, I like the idea of it because on the Louisville side, you have the Coal Creek Trail, which continues along the creek for many miles. And, so obviously there's possibilities there.
And I don't think it would have a negative impact on our trailhead up here. It's far enough away that, people could come down here to continue along the creek, and I still think that there's value to having the trailhead down far up.
Sean, it also helps eliminate, the parking, people wanting to park in Original Town, which is also a concern, with the trailhead. I think it helps that problem. It's also one of our trails, and one of them that gets expedited through when we do our Boulder rankings is that other trail through Rogers Farm from basically Town Hall up through the property to connect into that trail. That's just it would remove the need for that connector even needing to happen. And Boulder has said that is an important connector for them. So I think they would be on board if we could do this. And I think the unique thing is that because Rogers Farm, we have a developer there that we think we could work with, potentially anyway, to get that incorporated, and then some other property that might be available.
Right.
So
because I don't know that they're going to be developing anything on the north side of the creek, it's all on the south side. So for them,
one of these properties could stop it, but I think we should have the plan ready, and in case a property opportunities change all the time, be ready. But so, Allison, I think, who do we ask to just even consider the feasibility of this, to understand if this is even, if this is so far out there, there's reasons why we can't do this, or that it's actually possible? Would that be through town staff, or?
I could check in. We've been talking about it for the last couple of months, but haven't really come to a decision. So, if you could kind of give me more of a structure to ask about.
So a plan of where the trail would potentially come.
Or just really specific things you want me to check, what about homeowners I know is a concern. I know there was talk last month, when we did go to Boulder County for Shan Shan, the trailhead up there, they mentioned, there was a lot of discussion around so many access points. I guess that would be another one. And then last month we mentioned, in the notes that, the expense of the property. So I don't know.
I think the angle that I'm thinking, you all can correct me if I'm wrong, but this would all be if the properties became available. Would there be anything on the structure of the creek or floodplain things that we would need to consider that would make a trail either a go or a no-go through that area? I think that's
so just being
thinking.
Prepared if these other parcels came available?
Yeah, I think so.
There might be a feasibility study, sort of an overall analysis.
That sounds about right. Sounds like the term I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's called a feasibility study, just an analysis of
whether we can do this.
But I don't know that we need to start with a study. Like, couldn't town staff just review it prior to us putting any money forward and give us
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Yeah.
Especially with the experience they have with Parks 1 and 2, seems like it might
Yeah.
be fresh. I don't
They
know,
have
maybe
a-
not, maybe it's totally different, I don't know. But
A little different only
information.
because of it's in already a established residential
Mhm.
neighborhood. That might be the main
Well-
difference. And I think there was also a lot of flood reconstruction projects that kind of occurred,
Mhm.
you know, from the flood, and a lot of material, I think that was, you know, installed into that area. I'm not sure, you know, all the ramifications.
Yeah, and I guess for me, if there was something that said, no, Boulder County would never allow it, or the Army Corps of Engineers would never allow it for these reasons, then we have our answer, and we don't need to move on this.
And there might be something within the material from the flood reconstruction that might be relatively easy to find. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, good.
So what's the action?
So the action is for Allison to reach out and to start some sort of feasibility study to see if even a trail through that area is possible.
Okay. Do you need anything else from us, though, to do that?
Okay. Okay. If you do, just reach out.
I just don't want us to use the word study and then them to come back and say, well, that takes funding and that's going to require board approval, just an evaluation. Does that sound a little more soft? Okay.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, the next property is the 76 property. 2 board meetings ago, Ken and I did bring up the thought on the one property, and I can picture it, but I'm blanking on the address, but it's that larger parcel that we discussed was, thank you, Sean, that was ideal because of access across Marshall and how we could potentially tie into the open space, and also due to, yep, thank you. Boy, you know right where it is. So we brought it up to the board thinking that we would like them to reach out to the property owner and see if the property is available, or they'd be willing to talk to us. It's not currently for sale, but we think that the access off of both streets there make it a potentially good option to connect into that open space from the Davidson Mesa underpass. I guess the question, is there any update?
The assistant town manager, Martin Toth, reached out, and we have not gotten any information back yet.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I think we had a pretty strong recommendation to the board. I don't know if there's much else we need to discuss there. We'd like to hear what they have to say. So I think it's an interesting thought.
I didn't watch the video, but I saw the notes. Were there any comments from the board or feedback when you gave the presentation?
I mean, Sandy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the board was generally open to the idea, especially since we pitched it as a connector, but there might also be other town uses that could be used on that property, and not that it was just for open space. Like, we could be creative that if there was trail access through there, but the town had other purposes, that they generally, my takeaway was they appreciated how we were thinking about them and bringing them a potential solution to that underpass.
I was in the audience that day, and they were very supportive.
Okay, and then 5C, so the ecological study. So for those in the audience, we did get a ecological study from the town of Boulder on that property. What we felt as a open space committee was that we wanted to have stronger recommendations about the impact of building on the reservoir. So we're paying for an additional ecological study that will answer some of the questions, you know, how far set back should it be? What's the impact of wastewater, that kind of thing. So that's what we're discussing. It's not the original Boulder County. It's the second one that we're commissioning to help us answer questions about the impact. Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but on Boulder County open space, if they want to buy an open space parcel, they look for 5 things. One is that parcel going to be possibly developed? So that's one. Another thing that makes it valuable is if it's up against other open space, which the Hodgkin Harris is. Another is, has it been used for agricultural use, or does it have, and it has been in the 50s, it had wheat or corn that they grew in it. The other one is it habitat? Well, of course it's habitat. It's habitat for all the birds that we just saw, as well as the prairie dogs, which are keystone species for hundreds and hundreds, but I think 120 different insects and bugs and snakes and things like that. And then there's one more thing. Do you know what that is? Oh, connecting trails. Does it connect trails? And it would. So it meets all 5 requirements.
So, but the thing about this right now is there's an active development plan, so we can't discuss it.
Okay.
We're not allowed to, and we really shouldn't be. We want to be prepared in case the development plan comes, that we can give the best recommendations we can to protect that resource for the town. And then let's say if that doesn't happen, then we'll be having different discussions about that property, and we're gearing up to be ready to have those discussions, but we need to be fairly careful.
Sure, I
right
appreciate
now.
that.
So, but that's the intent of this other study. So, Allison?
The study should be ready for us by our next meeting.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Well, there we go. Thank you. Any other discussion on these properties? Okay. Oh, yeah.
I have one question following up on the trail that you guys talked about for sorry, bear with me, that Boulder County is considering behind the 76th Street parcel. It sounded very great. Like Allison had some details on it as to the location of that, but did anyone ever learn exactly where that trail?
Oh, you mean the fact that in the Boulder County response to our prioritized trails and open space, that they said they had identified a preferred alignment?
Yep.
Have not heard. Okay. Or I have not heard, and we haven't really asked.
Okay.
And
I just thought that was relevant to our thoughts on that parcel. That's all.
Okay.
I think we shared it last year, and there were like a couple of alignments near that wastewater treatment plant, and then Louisville had them in an agenda, but it was a long time ago. We could probably dig it up.
I think, yeah, I mean, if we could find out, it would be great. I think as we see it start coming up with them, we'll learn more. But I think, the interesting thing was if that property there might change their minds, because we think that the way that, just having a crossing on that curve and the speed, I think everybody's concerned about this, and the fact that there will be a trail on the north side of Marshall being built next year, that it's a pretty attractive solution. If we could, if the property owner is willing. So we'll see.
Is there a timeline for when Martin's going to follow up again, or how often is he trying to pursue this? Do you know?
I don't really know a timeline that he's come up with. I do know that, it was pretty recent that he reached out.
Okay, just wondering.
Okay. Well, let's move on to number 6. Allison, this was something I emailed. Were you able to put this in our folder?
Oh, before we get there, we have a
okay.
5D, the town 15.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't write it down. You're right. So, thank you. So, Sean, what do you want to talk about there?
So Ryan had created a document that was originally considered talking points for Chili Fest. I went in and altered it a bit. And I'm guessing I would like to review it with our committee and propose that we formalize that stance so that it can be presented to the board and to the public as to what our stance is officially, and potentially posted on our website.
Okay. I don't know if we have the document in our shares here, so we weren't prepared for that. This is in our Dropbox share, but it's not that doesn't get shared through all these files. So.
I was going to say I can email it to Allison or.
I don't have a way to get it onto this. We've changed servers, so I might be able to. Let me see.
I mean, our stance was that we did read our official stance to the board about 3 meetings ago. So it was on record there, and that our previous stance was that the board had said this will be a priority when the new board is on, for them to develop it, because they didn't want to address it with 3 members that would be leaving. And that it would be a priority to discuss that space next year. So I'm just wondering if maybe we shouldn't wait until the new board is seated to be pushing that.
That's fine. I just thought at least we should start formalizing it now, because the new board is going to be voted in by the time our next meeting happens. So I think priming the pump now is a good idea.
I was at a meeting, a trustee meeting about 3 meetings ago, where one of the town residents made a presentation in the public comment to make that parcel, Town 15, a dog park. And the trustees sent her to PROSAC. So I'm just wondering.
And she did present at PROSTAC.
And PROSTAC did hear that just in their last meeting. So they're gearing up for this too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is we need to coordinate with them.
Well, I don't know if we need to coordinate, because I think we have different objectives. I think we both will probably present our views of it and then have them, it's ultimately going to be their decision on how to use that land. And a decision might be no decision, that we're not ready to actually make a decision on this property yet, which, anyway, so.
Did you get it? You didn't? What? Make sure it got sent.
What I took away from the last meeting, though, is that Mark was talking about creating our stance and then, like Sean just said, having it set to go when the new board is there. And I almost got that he was saying we should be doing not just the talking points, but make it a little more formal document. Am I the only one that heard that? Did you guys take away something else?
I think, here's something else to consider that we talked about. In the future, we need to be doing our long-term property rankings, but also our short-term property rankings. Feels like this falls right into that early next year, we're going to be redoing these rankings, and that, should we be taking one property and focusing on that, or should we be ranking and presenting the whole lot to the group?
I heard that he was requesting more based on that property, because there's going to be $100,000 that's going to be used towards evaluating the town's desire.
Actually, let me make a correction on that. That money has all been completely removed from the budget.
So
the other comment I would make to you as a board member is, this is going to be a tough decision on this. I am continuing to push we need to have a discussion on this. I'm going to encourage you to collaborate. Don't try and compete with the other, try and collaborate with your fellows on the other advisory committees who have an interest, because it's going to be very hard for the board to make a decision on competing interests, and that it's a pretty big parcel of land. So why don't you try and work with other groups who have, PROSTAC. I continue to encourage the 2 groups to work together. It makes it a whole lot easier for the board when we see people work together as opposed to working against each other. So, we want to try and solve as many problems with that piece of land as we can. So I would encourage collaboration if you can.
Okay, that's good.
But the $100,000 was removed from the budget.
Okay, that's good info.
Because the board felt that there was a bigger interest right now in the placemaking sorts of activities that were happening with CAPS. And there was something else that we spent part of the money in, but the $100,000 was removed.
So what do you know about the plan for evaluating Town 15? Like, do we even need to touch on this now?
At this point, there is no plan. I brought it up when we presented the budget the other night, and that, when we took the $100,000 out, did that mean that this is not important? We had an entire retreat, or a part of a retreat, where we talked about it, and we all agreed that we need to be proactive in thinking about this piece of land instead of letting things happen to us, that the town needs to be thinking about this and try and deal with all the many things that people would like us to deal with it. So it's not on the back of the plate, but the problem is that when the $100,000 comes out, that means that we're not quite as focused on it as we were before. However, as I said at the meeting, we have 2 advisory committees who have a strong interest in making sure that this piece of land is put to the best use for the residents. And so, you know, again, I would encourage you, collaborate, because if the 2 of you together come up with a great plan for this piece of land, I think the board will get more excited about it rather than us having to say, oh, this one's right or this one's wrong. Collaboration is always a better way to get things accomplished. So that's just my personal opinion. I think both committees do great work, and I really believe if the 2 of you work together, you could come up with some bang-up options for us that we'd all get excited about.
Okay. So based on that, Sean, do you want to continue, or what do you think we should do? I mean, I don't think reviewing the document is bad.
No, it's not, and it is a stance. It's not saying we're against whatever other committees are saying. It's just saying, because there has been some questions or comments, isn't that already open space? This puts to rest some of those questions. It's basically a frequently asked questions list of, you know, where is Town 15 on the OSAC priority? I mean, it's just a frequently asked question list. It's not particularly a stance, I guess is the best way to put it. It's where do we fit into that Town 15? And this is, you know, where it's a kind of a list of facts. You know, it's on our priority list. You know, it is an option to keep it as open space, although it is not open space now. It is owned by the town, and it is zoned a particular way that is not open space. So, you know, I think that as Town 15, because it's drawn so much attention and people have erroneous ideas of what it is or what it should be, or not erroneous of what it should be. I mean, anything could be there potentially. But I think as a advisory committee and what we see as our priorities for it, I think it's still important to have this and potentially, like I said, listed on our website, because it does answer some questions that people might be misinformed about. I think it's still a good idea to collaborate with ProStack or whoever we want to collaborate with or should collaborate with, because we can still come up with a large list, I'm sure, of things that land could be used as, either as one thing or multi-purpose things, because it's 15 acres. It's not a couple acres. It could be used for dog park and like I said, equestrian. It could be used for lots of different things, because it can, you know, but that's when we collaborate. Here, we're just saying, this is what it is, this is where we stand with it. If anyone has any questions, refer to this document.
I don't feel like that's true, though. I feel like this is confusing. I don't feel like it is a clear outline of what we think about things.
Well, that's why we talk about it. That's why I wanted to, if we're going to put something out like this, we need to kind of, this is the original draft form of it, so we can clarify if we need to.
Just to be clear, this was made so when we were at outreach events, like that we all were on the same page. That was the only intent.
Oh, I totally understand that. That's why I feel like it's a little out of date, and if we were gonna do it again, it would be totally different. At least it would for me.
This is uncharted territory. We've never, ever since I've been here, written up something like this that we've put on our website or our page. So I can't offer any guidance on how we should do this or what we should do.
The difference is town-owned property. You know, all the other properties we're looking at are privately owned. This is town-owned property. That could be anything. And again, as an advisory committee, we should advise what it can be as guidelines, so that if other groups come to us saying, well, I'd like to see this on it, you know, is it an open space type amenity, you know, and we can say, well, yes or no, based on or is it a Parks and Rec amenity?
Should we appoint a liaison for someone to work with ProSAC to see what they're thinking and report back to us?
I'm hearing Sean is saying it's two different things though, like this is OSAC's stance, and then how are we gonna collaborate with ProStac is the second
Yes,
thing.
it's two different things.
But when do you guys meet, next with ProStac? What are
We
your?
just had our leadership meeting,
Oh, you
so
did?
11 months from now. Not that we can't do other meetings, but normally we do it once a year, and this wasn't a topic that we discussed in our
Yeah.
leadership meeting.
I agree with you. It would be a good thing to add another meeting to address that with ProStac if that's something we want to do.
I mean, I think that's one topic that Ken and I can reach out to Corey and see if they want to get together and discuss it. I mean, we had a good meeting, enjoyed talking with those guys. I think they'd be open to it. But that isn't really quite what you're.
No, not this thing, in terms of collaborating on ideas of what they have versus what we have versus what individuals in the community have that might, pull from both sides, right? There's how many people in this town?
Well, but I have to think though that when this heats up again, there will be a formal process of collecting that feedback and doing that. So I mean, it's almost sounds like you're saying this would replace that though, and we want to be careful to not do that, right? To have an official document that we're posting saying these are the positions the town's taking on what the space should be. I don't know if that gets us in trouble.
Okay, well, all right, so going back to square one, this is what I wanted to focus on tonight. If we want to say anything on this, what do we want to say? And I don't want it to be confusing, so I want to that's exactly why I want to bring this up. What do we want to do with this? I still feel it's important to have something written up, because going forward, as we have seen over the past couple months, people feel very passionately about what should or should not go there.
So you're talking about, I'm just trying to clarify, putting together something that we as a committee are all in agreement about telling the public,
Yes.
not something that we're giving to the trustees?
Well, I mean, it go in front of the trustees, of course, for their approval. If we were going to put it on our website, it has to be passed by them.
Okay.
I mean, this document, again, the intention was, we're all on the same page when we're talking to the public at our events. And if we can either choose to expand on this, reorganize it, or if we're going to do something for the board, I think it would be a different form and a completely different document.
I feel like the first question is something that we're going to talk about later in this meeting, the answer there.
Yep.
And how.
Yes.
And then the bold statement above, is that saying that OSAC believes that Town 15 should be open space?
I mean, that as a group is what we decided on, the exact wording that we wanted to be our kind of official stance when we talk to the public to be. And this is exactly what I read to the board when I got in front of them at the board meeting, as I just read that statement. So I guess as of now, yes, this is our official stance.
I know I haven't had a chance to look at that document. Can we talk about this maybe at the next meeting when we've had a chance to review this?
Sure, it's one page. I mean, that's it.
It is one page?
Yeah, that's all it is. It's four Q&As.
I'm not saying that I feel like there's anything wrong with the information on there. I just don't know that it's the right information. I don't know that it's particularly relevant anymore, some of it. I feel like some of those questions are just random things. I don't know. And I also am just trying to understand the bold statement.
Well, the bold statement is our stance. The stance that in a meeting we agreed upon. We actually word crafted this exactly to be this. So I would say it is our official stance. The other things were just other questions that we'd received as a group and put out the answer. So it wasn't a whole lot of thought. It was, okay, we've been asked this. Here's our answer.
I guess I'm just saying that if I was just your average person looking at it, I would think, I would see the second question, and I would think that means that that's something we're considering. But does that mean we're not considering other things? And the third question, same thing.
But again, I think we have to differentiate this document being for the intention of us having it at an event, but not making it public. That was never the intent of this document. So.
Okay, I understand that, and I think it's great for that, but that's not what we're talking about using it for now.
Correct.
And I don't think it's right for what the new
I
use
agree.
that you're talking about. Okay,
I
so
agree.
so we're talking about how we're going to change it now, or?
Well, I think we need to decide if that's something we want to do, is actually make an official
Okay, I get it
stance
now.
that we put on our website. And maybe since we're all just getting our head wrapped around this, Sean, maybe what I would recommend is that, would you take a stab at that and come back and show us something at the next meeting on what you're thinking? Or a group of us do that? I just don't think, I mean, we're going to be here for hours if we're going to try to spin on this in the meeting without thinking about it ahead of time.
Sure, yeah, I mean, we can circulate this offline and talk about it offline through email and try and figure out if this is something we want to pursue, and then come back with, if we're doing this, this is kind of a rough draft, and then finalize it during that meeting, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay,
we can do that.
good, okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Do you want to reach out to ProStack, or do we want to discuss that at the next meeting as well?
Let's discuss that when Ken's here also, because that's something he'll need to probably lead. Well, at least for a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. But well, let's discuss. I think that's another good topic for next time, is what would our strategy for reaching out to ProStack be, or how do we want to handle that? Because I do think 11 months from now is too long. I think it should be something we do, and actually what I think we would do there is I think we should make that a work plan item, and we'll start developing our work plan in the next few items, and then having it clearly defined there. I think number one would be a great thing for the board to see, that we're collaborating on an important piece, and then it's very clearly set in our plan that that's something we'll be working on. So that's my recommendation there. So good. Okay, good. Okay, so let's move on. This next topic actually is along a lot the same lines. Can I see the mouse? Oh, yeah. So Tracy's recommendation a few meetings ago was a really good one, was that, we started doing a trails continuity document, but we weren't doing the same thing for open space. We have our open space summary report, which is a public-facing document that we put a lot of time into word crafting it and getting it looking right, but there's a lot of discussion about properties that we forget, by the next meeting a lot of times what we discuss. So I took it as the action item to prototype this. This looks exactly the same as the trails continuity document. It's got the same pictures, but it looks a lot different, and I apologize, I didn't get a chance to circulate this to everyone, and so I will. And so essentially it's the same thing. It's got a map, and then it just goes into each property. And so, for example, we talked a lot about this 3rd Avenue property at the last meeting, so summarized it, putting in notes that we have from each meetings to help keep the history of what we discussed. And then I go into the other properties that are on the map, and I went back about the different recommendations that we made, talking about, that we brought it up in the board meeting, these kind of history. This is just stuff that we lose so quickly. So I guess the discussion here is, do we like this format? Number one, is this a good idea? Do we like this format? And then the other question Ken and I wanted to discuss was, because it's part of this continuity document, should we keep this as a separate document, or should we combine the trails and the open space document into one? So, and I'm fine if we don't want to decide all this meeting, if we would rather circulate it and maybe have some discussion, circulate the document, and then come back and make a decision next time. I think that's fine.
Off the cuff, I think it's a great idea. I love the fact, especially that we've got, which meeting it was talked in, so you could go back and review the video or the notes and those things, follow up. I think this is a tremendous asset. Whether it's one or two documents, I don't know if I have strong feelings yet, but I do really like the idea, and great job getting this going. This is a significant undertaking.
It actually was pretty easy because it was I really just took the open space summary report, and a lot of the details are from there, the pictures are from there. It's just getting the notes, some of the past notes, and I don't know how far back we would want to go. You know, for example, I think a key one though is on the Ridge property. You know, I said, you know, we did investigate looking at this property and remembering what we decided.
I sent you some information on the Ridge property to fill in your gaps
Oh,
there.
okay, awesome.
But I'm with you. And my personal stance is the newer really is the most relevant. Otherwise, it could go on and on and on forever.
That's actually a really good point. To
What-
structure the newer meeting content notes on top.
Oh, that works too. I was just thinking like the newest data, the latest discussion. Like we could go on forever about how many times we've talked about the Ridge 2 property and all the
Yeah.
details, but I think then people aren't going to read it and use it as much.
Like this one.
And I don't care about one document or two. It seems like two might be easier for grabbing purposes and not sorting through everything. My only thought on the format, I really like this. You did an awesome job, Ryan. But I'm curious about the town staff communication with the property owners and when that last occurred. So like on the Ridge 2 document or Ridge 2 parcel, I know we talked about, do we want to have them reach out? I don't remember if they ever reached out, and that might be relevant, like town staff reached out and learned.
I completely agree.
What did they learn and how did that shape why we don't prioritize it as high anymore? And when did they learn, or was there a plan to follow up or something like that? And we could just have a separate section, I guess, like relevant town staff communication or something?
I just think notes on a certain date, because
Yeah.
that
No,
information
just like-
should be coming back to us in
Yeah, sure.
meetings.
Yeah, that works.
I agree, though. That's a huge piece of this information that we're always asking, you know, we're always pestering Allison. When did they reach out last? You know, what was the response? Now we'll just write it down.
Yeah. And
I think this is really good work for all of us, because we just don't, we don't have institutional memory on everything, and I think this is really a great idea, and there's lots of projects that we work on that we could do stuff like this, but.
Well, and just so you know.
I love it.
We started this with the trails, and the trails document is much more involved because I think we're up to trail AA now. But there's a lot of them that said weren't going to be built for various reasons with Boulder County, and we keep them in there so when we get asked, we remember exactly why they were pulled off the list, and that served us really well. And then when Tracy said, why aren't we doing that with property? It was like, yeah, it's our main charter, and we're not doing that.
This
So that was
is a
really good
hot topic that
recommendation.
always comes up, and board members, we never know, because we don't do it, we aren't as involved with it as you guys. So having some of the, have it recorded is very, very helpful.
And we're always questioning too, though. We're always wondering. It's really in the, it hasn't been documented. Hard to follow. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's good timing. The number of parcels that we evaluate now is smaller than it's been in the 3 or 4 years I've been involved with this committee. So it's not insurmountable to, we're not tracking 100 properties here. We're talking 10 or 12. So I like that. My, main concern is, what's the ongoing maintenance of this? I don't want to dump that all on you. You do enough. Do we need to divvy this task up? Do we need to?
Probably, but it's not, and actually I find that with my computer at meetings, I usually just fill it in as we go, and then it's not too bad. But I do agree we should divvy it up. So, well, actually, anybody else have any comments?
I'm just going to go back to the town staff and how we can get that information if it's relevant to any of those parcels. So once I think it's all done, would it be appropriate to then create a list of questions for you, Allison, shoot them off to you and say, we have these 6 questions about all of our parcels. Who was last communicated with and when, and what was the plan?
Absolutely. And if I could pass this on with the context of the questions,
Perfect.
Like you said, there's only a handful of properties, and it
should be pretty
probably
easy.
wouldn't be too hard.
Awesome. Thank you.
I like that suggestion. So let's the plan be that this was pretty quick introduction to this. I will circulate this after the meeting, and then we'll finalize how we want to do this at the next meeting. but we'll all have it. And I will, I'll throw it in our document share right away, just so we have it there also, since we seem to be making progress on this. So cool. And so, yeah, I've named them, there's an open space continuity document, and then there's a trails continuity document. So we may think about how we name them to make them more obvious or whatever, but that's an easy change. So, okay. Topic 7, managing long-term and short-term properties. And when we put the agenda together, did this pretty quick. 8, I think is really the same issue. So, it was a follow-up of last time deciding that, yes, we should be ranking, we should be redoing our open space summary report once a year. It's a primary thing that we do as an open space committee, and there's only 6 properties or 8 properties left, I forget now, but we should just be doing that every year. So, jumping to 8, I talked to Ken, and he thinks that we should just schedule the next ranking and update early, as something we do in the very first, in Q1 of next year. That's our initial thought, just with other things we have in our work plan coming up, and we've only got 2 more meetings this year, that I think that, even at the first meeting, we could get the evaluation form out. Having this document available will be a good resource to help people evaluate those properties. So unless there's any objection, or if we want to have any discussion, but I think that's what I'd recommend is Q1. I'm seeing a lot of head nods, so let's schedule that. And then along those lines, though, and something we can get ahead of is how do we want to do this, managing these long-term and short-term property priorities? So the open space summary report, in my opinion, is a long-term priority plan that we put together. And so how would we do this short-term, what would that look like in terms of planning for the year? And we don't really have a plan yet, so I'll just open that up to discussion.
We review the long-term plan annually, right? So short-term could be quarterly, or something that gets on the agenda every 3 months, or maybe more frequently, every other. Just as an excuse to come back to it again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The way I envision this, though, is that we would actually have this open, the long-term ranking, but then almost a second ranking that's short-term.
Right.
And the
that
criteria.
represents what's available or
Right.
what could be available.
The criteria would be different.
Yeah, it's or maybe even just the weighting. One of the weighting is
Yeah.
availability, and we weight that at 80% instead of 20% or something like that. I actually don't think this will be hard when we rank properties, because we'll know what's available and what isn't when we start.
I almost think of the short-term plan as being updated almost every month to see what's available out there.
Do we have a plan for if something just comes up and we would have to act on it fast?
So this sits in our work plan as one of the top items, to continue to monitor open space availability or something like that. So saying we have a plan, I would say no, but the fact that we have an open space committee somewhat makes that a plan. But I do think that, making it a standing update, that every meeting we reevaluate the plan. Has anybody heard anything about any of these properties or
That's what
something?
I say.
I think that's a good idea.
Unless you want to have one person be in charge of it and sort of collect it, or just open it up.
So it seems like when we rank at the beginning of the year, do 2 different rankings and then make sure we review it the short term every meeting.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like it is. Short term to me would be we have some sort of standing update. Some months we may have nothing. Other months we may have a new property that pops up. These Third Avenue properties have certainly changed in the last few months. Sean and I kind of talked offline a little bit about some of the Rocky Flats and Rocky Mountain Greenway, how that topic may kind of go away from a standing update. So we may have some room at the risk of getting too many standing updates in our agenda each month.
We get through those pretty quickly, though. They're usually only a few minutes, but they're valuable. You know, it's usually a one or two liner. Okay. I mean, I don't think we need to overcomplicate this. I think we have a reasonable plan that will roll into our work plan for next year based on just those two things. That when we do our ranking, we'll rank long-term, you know, long-term and short-term, and then add a standing update on the short-term properties each meeting. And we're done.
We do just need to think of that criteria though
Yeah, I
beforehand,
agree.
so we're not doing that all at the same meeting.
And maybe, and actually, Joel, if you would take a note, I think we need to put looking at the criteria either next month or December. You know, it'd be nice to have that set before we go into the rankings early in Q1. I don't think that'll be a long discussion because we have, I mean, the rankings that, you know, we simplified them a lot last time. Sean did a lot of that work and that really helped. But we have a good starting point with that. Okay. Any other questions, discussion? All right, number 9, trail access for Ridge residents. So Sean, I will let you take over since I know you have a lot to share on this.
Yeah, so, what to share? So I know that Patrick we had discussed with Patrick a while ago, the cost to put in, I think it was whatever the number was, number 11, trail number 11 that went from Key Bank down to, I think, the Ridge.
The High Plains Drive on the west side.
Yes, on the west side.
McCaslin.
Right, and I believe that Loris came back and said that in order to put a trail there, it would require some kind of retaining walls, and then with the cost of that, I believe it was close to $1 million. I don't know, Allison, does that sound right?
I think so.
Okay, so you know, I drove past it a few times, and looking at the property lines under that Boco Properties site, and looking at the slope of the land going up to, there's a second tier. It's kind of a tiered terrace thing. That second terrace, and it looks like there's a car or something that's driven up there, which is what drew my attention to it in the first place. It looks like it has the potential to not require retaining walls, be within the ADA compliance of a 4% grade, and then C, would allow the folks that are kind of, and again, since we have now a nice sidewalk on the west side of McCaslin to parallel the east side, it'd be nice to continue that path all the way up to the Ridge and those folks that live there, so that instead of having to cross and meander down and around and through and underneath stuff and finally get back to McCaslin to go to work or go to downtown, it'd be nice for them to have a more direct way to access down McCaslin. And again, I'm thinking about transportation purposes for people that commute to Boulder by bike or whatever. So, you know, just looking at it and walking a little bit, it looks like there is the potential for building a trail that would not cost $1 million, that would meet ADA compliance and would get the people at the Ridge more direct access for commuting along McCaslin without actually having to go onto McCaslin or to go on the east side set of trails that we have already that really kind of take you out of the way of commuting, for commuting purposes. Granted, if you're just looking for a nice hike, yeah, we can get by, but I'm also thinking about from a larger transportation plan. I know that other cities do this. They look at how to create better ways of connectivity that allow people easier access without having to get in a car, or, you know, buses or whatever, to save on gas and environmental things. So I don't know if that was looked at by Loris, if they looked at that second tier when they were evaluating, or if they were looking at just basically putting a trail right along McCaslin where there is that steep slope that goes up the hill where you would have to push back dirt and build a retaining wall. So I don't know, I'm kind of looking for answers from Allison or from staff to see
Is-
what was evaluated.
Does anybody know if the trail from Rockview Circle is used?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Where's Rockview Circle?
High Plains Drive is on the
Oh,
McCaslin
yeah, okay, yep,
side, and then there's the kind of triangle. Because I'm looking at the satellite view, and I haven't been up in this area.
Oh, I go on those, I'm sure. So that other,
There is a trail.
there's a trail on the east side that meanders along the
Yeah,
backside.
so right now, people would have to cross McCaslin, go down here, and then meander all the way up and over and way, and then down into Purple Park, and finally under a bridge, and then finally come up and around over here to the sidewalk. Whereas I'm proposing that we can create a trail from, let's see, so there is a current
See right by the
crusher fine.
reservoir?
Yeah.
If you go back up to the neighborhood, see that? That right there.
Oh,
That's exactly
that's
what
an
I
old
was
Jeep.
asking
Jeep
about.
road.
Yeah, that's
I'm
what
just
Vanessa.
Yeah, no, that's just a Jeep road. That's, you're not even, people bike
that's-
that, but you're not really supposed to be
That-
on there.
Right, that's
It's
steep
a
and that's
social
private.
trail.
That's
Did I
steep
see
and that's
the
private
line?
property.
Line?
Right, that's
Yeah.
steep and private
Yeah.
property. That's the Ridge 2 property that we had looked at.
I mean, one counter argument to meandering, though, is at least if you're on that lower trail, you can get over Rock Creek Parkway without a stoplight. Because you can go under Rock Creek Parkway and get onto McCaslin without needing to stop. Right, because it goes under over there. Right there, right
Yeah.
back, right, so if you go down right there, you can go under, so you don't have to sit at the light or be there. So the other thing, I don't remember where I heard it, maybe it was a transportation meeting or maybe it was a board meeting, but I remember some discussion of actually putting a sidewalk on the other side of McCaslin along that stretch as a transportation connector
So
possibility.
directly on the road.
Right, on the other side though.
That's a pretty
Along
straight
there.
drop off.
Yeah,
isn't
it
it?
jumps
I know,
on
but
back.
they said it was, and maybe it was a expanded bike lane and not a sidewalk. Maybe it would be connected to the road.
I remember some conversation about that too. I don't know where it was though. Did
I
we-
think it was just ideas on maybe what they would propose. Maybe it was Dr. Cog of things they could propose to get money for to build. You know, but it was for these exact purposes, right? To expand transportation, you know, non-car transportation through the town. I think, Allison, is there a way to follow up and just see what they looked at? I mean, will that history be there, or is it too far gone?
You know, I'm sure I can find something.
It'll just take you a little time.
I mean, we don't need it right now.
Yeah, we
but-
don't need it now, but.
But how about we just start with that? If we could just look and see what,
But on our 2018 five-year trail map, it was number 4 and number 9. We had
Mhm.
trails. I mean, right where you're
oh yeah, it's,
talking about.
we
on the
always rank it
west
high.
side.
Just the comments were that it's pretty expensive and not something that would get prioritized because of the expense.
Right. Well, I do remember that we did have the company look at all of these, and then they prioritized certain ones due to costs and things like that. So there's got to be a document out there.
I would hope so.
Sean, when you were originally talking about this, you were.
So there's a second tier. Is there a way to change this to 3D?
Can you just zoom in?
Yeah, so, and then let me rotate.
But you're still talking about within, like, the easement?
Yeah, yes, within the easement, yes. So basically, you come up, so, yeah, so you have this, I think there's a crusher fine trail here, and it stops right here at this entrance.
Yes.
If you continue along here, you can kind of see, actually even here, there is some kind of trail or something going up here, and there is a second tier that's flat along this area here. Now, down here along the road, it's very steep, but up here, it's very flat and fairly even, where you could just continue to trail all the way along here, kind of along the backside of those homes, which are, they have fences, so hopefully it's not too bad for them.
I think think the issue might be right there, though, behind those homes, where it comes off of that tier, it's pretty steep.
Yeah, so I'm suggesting that you can come actually around here and cut around those trees, not going straight down here, because that
No,
is
but I
steep.
think it gets steep further up behind the homes, where that tier is starting to come down.
Okay.
And that might be the ADA, it might be an ADA issue through there.
Yeah, I didn't get a laser level out to see what,
Well,
how
but I drove
steep
by
it
it
was.
today, though, but that tier goes up. Oh, yeah. You could do the,
I'm not sure it'll show very well. So, oops, wrong way.
You can't park there.
So you're talking about right here.
I'm talking further down.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Where that hill goes up and then it starts to go back down.
Right there.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, let's just see what they have.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I mean, I feel like we should just re-examine it one more time if it hadn't been looked at before, because I really do think we could potentially build something that's not as expensive as what was discussed previously, and allow these folks here, the trail could come down over here instead of straight down. Because I know that was an issue. Well, what if their kid's on a bike and they just come screaming out here?
That's what
you could cut back into the neighborhood, basically cut around these trees back there. And then I know there's a sidewalk, in there somewhere. I think it starts or ends right there. So you could cut back into that sidewalk and then they could safely cross over there.
Okay.
And then cut across there. So anyway, that was my only point. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't already examined, because that was a high priority, as you mentioned, Allison. And I feel like, we got this beautiful west side sidewalk now all the way up McCaslin, all the way up to Key Bank, and then we got the crusher fine, and then it just stops. And then you got the rich people that are kind of isolated. I mean, they can cross the street now at least, they got a light there, but they're still kind of isolated. And I know that it has been, someone came up, Sandy, you were there, you had that person that came up and was asking about if there was a way she could bike into Boulder. Of course, the next big impediment is that circle. I don't know how to get around that.
well, but eventually there will be a way around that, because Tract A, that trail's now open. I mean, I know at the other end.
Oh, yeah,
it's done,
and you
but
cut back
but
east.
Once that finishes, and then there's, where the regional bikeway crosses over 36, there's plans to bring that back down in. And that would be a great way to get on that bike path without needing to be through all that mess of the 36 McCaslin interchange.
Yeah, that's awful.
And if you haven't been on Tract A, go check it out. It's stunning down there. It is so, and you turn around and you look back, and the views that you have of the Flatirons through all that green. I've got some pictures I'll show you afterwards. It's really cool.
Did you go all the way to the end?
All the way to the dead end.
Nice.
Came right back. Yep.
Sweet.
So once that's not a dead end, it'll be even better, but it's beautiful down there. So it's really cool that it's not. Now we can actually get on it now that trail's done. So cool. All right. Thank you, Sean. Anything else on that?
No, that's it.
Okay. So the next topic was outdoor education programming. This was one that Ken added to the agenda. If I'm reading through the intent here, this is on our work plan that we just need to evaluate. How did it go last year with the outdoor education programming? So, and it looks like Allison has some information for us on what we did and what it cost. Or maybe not what it cost, but what we did.
Yeah, we're not worried about what it costs.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. It was in the contract. But, so we had 7 different programs this year, and 5 different hikes and a bug hunt. Our bug hunt was canceled this year. We didn't have signups. Last year, it was pretty low as well, and we did debate for this year if we were going to come up with another idea, because bug hunt has been low the last couple of years. So that was one thing I wanted to throw out there. We do a Living with Coyotes in January. We had a lot of ice. We tried to reschedule. I think we juggled it around, and we ended up not running with that one because of ice and weather conditions on the day that we planned it, but then we planned it the next weekend, and not everyone showed up that had signed up for it. And that often happens when we have to reschedule something because people are busy the next weekend or have something scheduled. We had our winter hike in February, and just for the new people, we try to schedule something almost every month. Or, you know, if there's Chili Fest or 4th of July or Arbor Day, we don't have something that month, but Ashley, our wildlife ecologist, will come and man a booth. Or National Trails Day, she comes to that and talks about coyotes. Well, whatever really is the hot topic for the residents and what the committee has kind of identified as a hot topic, like if it's rattlesnakes this year, or if it's coyotes or raccoons getting into people's bird feeders, you know, and then she brings materials on strategies to help, you know, with wildlife encounters and things like that. So we did a coyote hike, a winter hike, a bird hike, and then we did 2 night hikes. We have one of which is occurring on October 19th. And it starts at 5:30, and we say 5:30 to 6:30, but Ashley will go until 7 or 7:30. We're really lucky to have her because she gets really excited, and we usually have a large sign up. And our night hikes were one of the ideas we came up with year before last, and people have really liked the night hikes because it's kind of cool, and the kids go out into the parks, you know, at twilight and while it's kind of dark, and they don't usually get to go out there in the parks when it's nighttime. And we've scheduled them around full moons. We do all kinds of crazy planning for these night hikes because you have to have a certain moon, and then like we want to see bats, you know, so then we're in August when it's the hottest and we're by a creek. So there's a lot of strategery that goes on with these. And we had really good participation for our Jeff and Paige concert. There was like over 400 people that came. I would say that's in tight competition with National Trails Day, which is our other big event for the year. Really, in my opinion, the main program that we talked about last year, potentially needing tweaking. It's also right around Chili Fest, busy time of the year. People are on vacation, and that's bug hunt. And, you know, we can always revamp any of these, and if anybody has any ideas, I'm sure Ashley and I can come up with a program around it.
Did we discuss that something with our Raptor program would be included? It maybe wouldn't be included in the outdoor programming, but it would be included in the budget for that, right? If Ashley was going to help. Am I remembering that right? Or
so Vanessa has a really good update about this.
Okay.
If
I mean, it's kind
you
of
want to do it
relevant,
now,
so
or if you want to wait for her.
I mean, it's somewhat relevant.
Spot on
to
the
this,
agenda.
So yeah, if you'd like to give us an update, that'd be great.
Sure, just on the, well, I met with Peter, who's a Boulder Raptor monitor, and he's helped me a lot just identify key areas in Superior and contact some great volunteers. And I talked to Ashley for about a half an hour, and she gave me some great ideas. I'm still putting some things together as far as the actual data we're going to collect and how we're going to share it and how we're going to use it. But I've got 3 volunteers that are getting started in 3 different areas that we've identified in the town. And so I'm really excited that it's getting started. And these are great volunteers that know a whole lot more than I do and have actually already been doing this for several years and are really interested in doing this. I've gotten my first report from Peter already. I'm asking the volunteers to send in reports 2 times a month, so pretty much every.
Are these volunteers from the same group of folks that did the?
Those are the people I went to at first. I've got 3 people from that, so I could potentially look for more volunteers because there are more areas that we've identified There's one other person I need to follow through with. But yeah, I might need to look at other ways to reach out to find some other people. I haven't gotten to work on that myself yet. And as far as meeting with Ashley about what you were talking about with the, we talked about a training is what we were talking about, a volunteer training. And in speaking with Ashley and with Allison, it would take too much of Ashley's time to do something like that. But Peter's volunteered to help put together a training. I feel like I could help with that too. And then Alice and I were talking about if we put together, I haven't talked to you about this yet, sorry. If we put together some kind of a training that Ashley could review what we were going to do and give us her ideas and thoughts on going forward with the training that we came up with. So that's kind of what we're thinking. At this point, I have such a small volunteer base that I'm just getting together with each volunteer individually and going to the site, the area that they're going to be monitoring, and talking to them about what we're looking for and getting to know them, and it's manageable from that standpoint for me. So,
and the other thing is, like, how many people do we want to know about the locations? And and we do have time left with Ashley because of the bug hunt, but we don't have like 20 hours of her time. But we thought that reviewing Vanessa's, training guide and like providing input or like just helping to talk through some stuff was like a really valuable idea.
Or even if things come up as going forward, it would be great just to be able to contact her once in a while. We accomplished so much in just a half an hour discussion. So
yes.
She's really a great resource to have, and I appreciate having that so much.
Yeah, and she's there for exactly, that's part of her contract is like, if we have coyote pups in an open space, we all go out as Parks, Rec, and Open Space Department staff and haze coyotes. We all know how to haze because Ashley has trained everyone, and any types of wildlife things like this, she's always available for input.
I guess I don't know exactly. I feel like every meeting I'm just going to be giving you an update about what I'm doing, and as far as the data that I'm collecting, I feel like if there's just anything notable that I feel like I need to bring to your attention, that I will, but otherwise I'll just generally talk about what has happened over the last month. I won't give you, an outline of data or a report or anything like that.
But I think you've made amazing progress. We've been talking about this since I've been on here, and we've had a few ideas, but in a few months you've made way more progress than we ever did before, so that's a great job.
Thank you.
I think just hearing, whatever since we're kind of all new to this, whatever you think is relevant to report is great. And it does seem like we should somehow schedule some of Ashley's time. Maybe, I don't know if we take the whole bug hunt thing and turn it into some raptor support function, or, does that make sense, or is that kind of come out of a different group of money that we spend with her? It's not really outreach, but it's still helping us to do this volunteer and raptor program.
Right. It's really up to the committee. I would have to ask Ashley, if we had a firm framework, and then we could estimate how many hours it would be, and then try to figure out, what we lose, or if we have to put more funding towards her contract. I'm not sure what that looks like. I guess it just depends. And then, there's always this discussion between, people that are impacted, through an educational program. Is it, what is it geared towards, or, what are the weights and measures of the committee and how the committee feels?
It'd be interesting to do a raptor education program? I mean, not to go see the sites, but
We
just.
do have Hot Quest on National Trails Day, so that was one of the other,
And that's very
Raptor
popular.
education. Yeah. But we could change that even, if we wanted to.
Well, that's so cool. I mean, I would hate to lose that, but just something
Right.
else that maybe was a hike and a Raptor awareness or something, not to divulge NASA, because I know that needs to be kept secret, but the Raptors are so cool in our town, and to learn, I mean, I want to go on it because I want to learn more about them.
And we do that and owl hike, which, they've seen an owl once since we started the program, but we always see the bats.
The bird walk she does, though,
The winter bird walk.
she focuses on raptors for that.
Oh, okay.
And that's actually, when I moved here, I went on that,
Oh,
and that's how
okay.
I learned and got started here in the area, so.
We do a bird hike, but it's not specific to raptors.
So when do we have to have this decided? Do we need it pretty soon, or?
I usually start brainstorming with Ashley on dates and how we're gonna tweak programs, because we don't, even though it may be named the same thing, a lot of times we, change it up a little bit, and, because a lot of our attendees are repeat visitors. So I like to try to, because usually we have the first one late January. So usually we have our contract written out and dates settled by December, beginning of December. So then we can start marketing and getting people to sign up.
It seems like maybe a visit to the reservoir would be a good one, that she could do something for the residents there.
The only thing is access. We don't have access to that. I mean, it's a good idea. But I mean, it's not like they can get close, and they're kind of right on 88 there.
Isn't there side access off over by the townhomes?
It's all fenced in. Boulder County has the reservoir all fenced in.
Oh, right up close to it, yeah.
Yeah, so you can't really get in there and look around.
And the only other thought I had was maybe we could ask her what she thinks might be interesting, because she knows the group.
Mm-hmm.
And, it does sound like the bug hunt is, maybe we should not do that anymore, but then, one thought is to just say, hey, what do you think for that other slot? See what she comes back with.
Do we do anything around reptiles or amphibians?
We do that at the trails
We have
day,
our
too.
snake guy,
Yeah, Cameron.
Center for Snake Conservation, come out.
We've talked about other programming in the past, like there was some guy who presented in Louisville, some scientist from NCAR who presented to kids on climate and weather or something. What other ideas did we have in the past? Does anyone remember? No, I'm drawing a blank too. So do we want to continue to use Ashley as a sub for the bug hunt, or do something totally different would be my question. And if Ashley has another idea, I think that's awesome.
Well, if we decide to renew Ashley's contract for next year, it's all the programming that we've been talking about. So there's always, like, if we don't go with bug hunt, another program would be included in her contract. For
Okay.
example, if the group wanted to come up with something else, or if we wanted to do like a third night hike, since they've been really popular, it's kind of like the in style thing to do for a minute. And she, not only these however many programs, but she's also attending our Arbor Day, our National Trails Day, a few other events. And so that's a question, if we wanted to, not renew or something like that, that's up to the group.
I think that since maybe it's all the first time we've seen, we've only had a few minutes to look at this. Is it okay to shelve it till next week or next meeting and make a decision then? So everyone should become prepared with any ideas. And, you know, if we don't have anything solid, then we'll reach out to Ashley and see what she recommends. Like you said, maybe a third night hike or something like that.
Yeah, and I've talked to Ashley and she's really open to anything. I mean, she could talk about anything at wildlife associated. And usually we do straddle it over a couple of meetings just because, you know, if you have time to like look at some stuff other municipalities are doing or other groups that might be available. And then I can always ask her, you know, do you have any material on this? And she'll say yes, or she'll say, I'll make it, you know. So any ideas are totally welcome. And feel free to also, you know, if you guys email back and forth and think of something, I can get a hold of her before our next meeting.
It's another interesting one I've heard people ask about is fishing within the town. Like, where can you fish? What has fish? What, you know, I don't know if that would be something for her, but.
Do I need to renew my fly fishing class, you guys? Do I need to do
I
this
would-
again
I would-
next
yes, I
year?
would so be
Maybe
there.
I'll do that for you next
Oh,
year.
man.
I put it on the shelf for a couple years because the attendance dropped, but we do have our fly fishing
That
program.
would be.
Not just fishing, fly fishing. The
Well, there
art
was, I don't know, I saw something on social media where some guy was pulling some huge catfish out of water around here, and he didn't say where it was. I think I know where it is.
I think it was
but-
River Bend, where they want to put the new playground.
Yeah, but I mean, these catfish were monsters. I mean, these weren't just little, I mean, it was, you know, I think there was fish, do you? It was pretty awesome, I thought.
How about stargazing on open space?
Yeah, that's,
That would be popular.
We have.
I did that a few years, and then we,
Stargazing?
uh-huh.
Because that would be popular. It's a popular topic.
Yeah, I did that a couple of years, and I had the amateur astronomers come out, and during a meteor shower, we did it one year.
Mhm.
And what happens a lot of times is we'll have programs that'll last a couple years, and then as participants dwindle, kind of like bug hunt, we'll kind of wait until the next group of kids come up, you know, and revisit those programs for sure. But
I
that
just
could be
think
a-
Ashley may be great, but, you know, a different topic might bring in somebody else, so we have more variety of presenters.
I know we have the reptile guy at the Trails Day, yeah, sorry. But I still think it would be cool if Ashley did a hike where people went out in superior areas and found them, like at Purple Park where there's hundreds of bullfrogs during that particular time of year.
Yeah, and I mean, we could sub something like that for bug hunt. You know, not do bug hunt in that hot time of year when we have frogs.
okay. So let's decide next time. Is there information that people want to help make the decision? I mean, maybe circulating the list of what we did, would that be helpful? So if you could circulate that to either, you know, Ken or I, and we can send it out, or to the group, either way.
Or actually the last few years of lists that we've done.
Actually,
Well, this will be with Ashley. So like Star Party was one of my programs, and that was a Parks and Rec program. It was not an outdoor education program, which is a little bit different. And so we charged for that Parks and Rec program because we only have so much parking. We didn't want people crossing the street at night to go to Colton Trailhead, which was where we hosted it. And that's why we charged a fee, because we needed to and it was a very minimal fee, but that we really needed to keep the amount of people to a certain number because of parking and access and safety. So it's interesting because it is a fine line of outdoor education and then parks and recreation programs, and how that kind of plays hand in hand and kind of overlaps. And
okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, the funding for the Raptor, programming, anything we need to follow up on that? Do you just want to, well, given that we have to have contract and budget and everything, do we need to come up with anything for that? Do you need any allotted money for Ashley? How are we gonna, I felt like that kind of got left up in the air.
Yeah, you're right. Should we come back with maybe a proposal of how much time we think we would want from Ashley next year on this, and then see how we work that in? Is that a good way to approach that?
Sure, absolutely. And then, you know, each program kind of has a certain amount of time associated with it. She kind of has two contracts. One is kind of for outdoor education, and then the other is for like wildlife issues.
Okay.
That comes from a different.
I see. So it could maybe fit into that wildlife issues bucket if it.
Well, it's not really the issues, meaning like coyotes,
right,
or raccoons getting it on, you know, getting into bird feeders and or trying to get into your house through a cat door, and how to mitigate that. So that's kind of a different topic than.
Sure.
You know,
but if we
education.
just come back with how much time we think we would need, is that sufficient?
Right, and then maybe have ideas on what, you know, if I send you these lists of how this has changed over the last few years, maybe what we would cut out to compensate for that.
Okay, yep, I think that's good. All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, updates and look ahead. So National Weekend of Service debrief. So again, this is where I wish I had my computer, because Ken had all those stats. I mean, he did email them out with the numbers, and if anybody can, I guess, yeah, maybe I have it on my phone. I think the
320 some people.
362.
362. The school was a huge, huge addition. I mean, it was I talked to a few of the teachers, and they said, you know, they didn't find that much trash, but it was good to go out and talk about it. And some of the kids were actually climbing, you know, through the weeds and everything to get to the trash. And it was also the same day as their fall fling. And so the teacher said it was so great to get them outside for a couple hours, because they were all just so amped up. So it worked out fabulously with them. Does anyone have the numbers?
I do.
Oh, and the amount of trash was it 100 and some?
259 pounds.
Okay, and we think that's low, because we think some people didn't report, or some people went out and just cleaned up on their own. So overall, great success. There was some feedback on possibly another event, and then maybe having one of the events be more structured. And I'm guessing what he means by that is, you know, a lot of community cleanups where you meet at one spot, you two, you know, go clean up next to this road, you two go over here. I assume that's what they mean, but I think we could discuss discuss in our work plan if we wanted to amend that for the cleanup that we do. But overall, I don't know if there were any complaints. I mean, we got the supplies out to people through a lot of the different ways, you know, Chili Fest, Town Hall, delivery. I don't know, it seemed to work well. So it's a good event. Number 2, this is just for me, just so you guys know, I did update the trail continuity document with a few things, mostly the trail along the river. I added that to the document, and so it's posted now up on our document share. So just know that it's been touched recently. And then standing updates. So wildlife enhancement and encouragement activities. I think that that really is morphed now into our Raptor program, which we got an awesome update on. Was there anything else on wildlife enhancement and encouragement? I don't think there was, nothing that I know of. All right, how about Rocky Mountain Greenway, Joel?
So Tracy was emailing right before this. We had sent out a couple of emails in our list group between last meeting and this meeting where kind of surprisingly, the Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge became open. And as it approached the opening time, it went to on hold Friday before it was supposed to open on Saturday, then quickly off of hold, and then opened on Saturday. I saw a little bit of activity there. Some friends of friends have ridden through there. The first day that it opened, there was a handful of protesters. a good friend of mine that I ride with often, he went through there last week and said that there's no real trail construction, which is of note to us, I think. He said it's basically they mowed down the grass and it's double track roads that really kind of go nowhere currently. There is a proposed trail map that we've seen. The interesting part about it is there's an entrance on the north side right now at Highway 128 near the High Plains Trail.
Okay.
So you can get in there. You can also get in at the south end near the, starts with a C. Candelas, thank you. The Candelas neighborhood. But my friend that rode there ended up hopping a barbed wire fence and riding up Indiana because he kind of just got stuck.
Oh.
So there's not a lot of in and out, but there's a potential connection with the Rocky Mountain Greenway, which, like I said, I think is of interest of this group, that's currently proposed as an elevated bridge over Indiana. So from the Westminster Off-Leash Dog Park on the east side of Indiana, elevated bridge up and over into Rocky Flats, and then there would be two connection points, one which I talked about, which is kind of near High Plains. The other one is very near the intersection of McCaslin and 128. I believe they call it the Church Gate or Church Entrance or something on the map. But that one I think is the one we keep our eye on because, you know, our position to this point has been, you know, looking at connectivity and do we want to connect Superior Trails? Do we want to not connect them? And do we make that kind of decision? But like I said, it's open. It's kind of a soft opening as they've called it. You know, I think people that want to go have been there and.
Where's that map?
Let's see.
Maps.
Yeah, that's a pretty big map. We don't have time to review all that. There we go. Well, no, that's the Greenway.
Yeah, it's interesting, Joel, that it's open, but it's kind of existing, almost social trail or Jeep trail.
It is,
I mean,
yeah.
that's actually good, though, that they haven't really done construction.
That was surprising to me, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up to this group, is that I thought when they opened it and they said, you know, they put this trail map out here that they had already done trail construction. That doesn't seem to be the case. There's a proposed trail on the northwest corner that's a small loop, and then there's I know it's on here somewhere, Sean, I just don't remember where it is.
Yeah, I don't know either.
No timeline that I've found so far on when these trails are going to be initiated, but I see you're on.
That's the full.
The Greenway, yeah.
Well, I guess that's good. It's encouraging. And there's still, isn't there still sampling to be done?
Well, Broomfield sent out an email that Sean sent on, and then they came back and said, no, we're going to pull that off the agenda. So where that stands, I don't really know. It's an interesting kind of dynamic. I don't know whatever happened. I mean, I assume the Superior case is still pending, but it's not prohibiting it from being open.
But maybe prohibiting it from construction.
Our case is really
There you go.
related to testing. We're not, at this
Yeah.
point, we haven't filed any case to stop it from opening.
This is the map I was talking about. So the trailhead or the entrance point that is of note to us, really, I think, is the Church Ditch entrance.
This is where currently is the trailhead right there, right?
You can get into that one currently and then on the south end. So it's hard to see on this map, but there's a difference in proposed trail and what's actually there.
That public access is open? I mean, that's kind of a weird spot. There isn't any parking there, is there?
No, there's not. There's parking on the north side of 128, but it's kind of an informal lot that feeds into Boulder
You're going
County.
down, oh, is that before you go down the hill? Like
Yeah.
kind of
Yes.
right up on the,
Yeah, it's up on the side there. It's got giant potholes in it.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
where the airplane guys go out and they're
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Is that why they all park up there?
Yeah, so you can see down here in kind of the bottom right corner, proposed highway crossing overhead bridge, which connects into the Westminster Off-Leash Dog Park and then continues down to Stanley Lake and I believe all the way to Rocky Mountain Arsenal eventually.
And then you got the Jefferson Parkway coming here through here sometime.
Yep, at some point. Okay.
I had one note on that, Joel. So Sandy Pennington is a wealth of knowledge on this and is going to be leaving the board. So I don't know, just might be nice for you guys to connect if she can keep you updated.
Sandy and I
after she's
do,
gone.
we do talk via email quite a bit.
Awesome.
She goes to the Rocky Flat Stewardship Council, and then I'm on that email list as well. So when I get the meeting notes and stuff, I peruse those and send those across. But Sandy does definitely keep me in the loop. I don't know if she's going to continue in that role once she's off the board. My guess is probably so because I think Sandy's involved, but I won't commit her to that.
Good point, thank you. Okay, Shan Shan Trailhead is the next standing update.
We haven't gotten any information back from Boulder County yet. We're just waiting on our final step there, and our budget was approved for next year. So that's the latest and greatest.
So once the Boulder approval comes, we're ready to go.
As long as it's January. Well, we,
Sure.
you know, bearing weather, keeping weather in mind and everything. But once our budget renews for next year.
So what is the town's investment in the road work that has to go into doing a cutout so people can pull off to the side and get into the trailhead? Or is that part of the budget?
That's part of the project.
That is part of the budget,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
And is all the design work is done, all the aesthetics and everything that'll go into that? I mean, is that what you proposed or is?
Yes.
Okay.
It's really just
Parking.
entrance into the lot and a cattle guard. You know, there's existing fencing, barbed wire fencing, both on the east side of the property and the west side of the property. So really all we have to do is, there's already fencing, agricultural fencing for cattle, you know, which graze in the area. And all we need to do is put in a cattle guard, the trail connectivity from McCaslin into, you know, along the parking lot and into, through the cattle guard and onto the trail. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's not very complicated.
Okay. Well, that's exciting.
I'm confused about the trailhead. I'm a little lost on that, Allison. So you were talking about, help me out, just the cattle guard and an entrance but am I missing something? The design of the trailhead that we've talked about in the past with Patrick and.
We looked at two different designs, and one of the designs was chosen to, you know, bring to Boulder County. Boulder County looked at the design before we presented it. We all went down and presented it to POSAC, and we already had the design work done, and then we just had to add a few tweaks that Boulder County requested. We went and re-presented it at their meeting. It was approved by that committee, but it has to go on to the commissioners for approval, which is like a final approval. And then we're done. We just construct it.
Every time we've talked about it in OSAC, we've brought up, will there be an opportunity for community input on the details of the trailhead and that design? And every time I've heard, especially from Patrick, 2 months ago, that was yes, we still have time to do.
As in
any
like
additional
landscaping, or what are you?
Yeah, or design of it. What was going to be presented was just kind of a shell, and maybe correct me if you guys heard anything different, maybe I did. Just a shell design that could be modified later, because we've talked in the past about getting community input as to the details of that trailhead.
Well, I think that since there were two iterations, the first iteration, there was a lot of that discussion, and I remember it was at that lower area. That's the design right there for the upper area
Right.
that was presented to
Right.
Boulder County.
And no further details beyond that, right?
No, that's it.
Okay, so they're still going to put additional design concepts into it, and community input could still be gathered for it.
Right, and I guess in the future, you know, if there's, for example, like some type of bathroom, or, you know, right now there isn't any irrigation or anything up there to provide like trees or additional landscaping, because we don't have irrigation up there.
Yeah.
But I guess in the future, you know, as far as, you know, amenities.
So is that totally locked in? Like it has to be exactly that shape and parking spaces and everything?
That's the design
That
that
is
went
locked in.
forward
The-
for
and the-
approval.
The space there doesn't really
Yeah,
lend
okay.
itself to anything else.
But that's it. Everything else will be worked on thereafter, right?
Yeah, I mean, if, you know, the group wanted to add other things,
Yeah, we just
have
talked
to
about
make
for a long time
recommendations.
about
and-
if the community wanted anything else
Right.
there and what that would be, because we haven't done any engagement on it. Because there was always, we need to get it approved first. We don't know if it's actually going to be approved, so why would you spend community engagement
Right.
time and money on that when we don't even know if it's going to be approved by BOCO yet?
Right, and I think this site too, maybe a little bit more than the other site that we were looking at, had a few more limitations as far as
Yeah.
being level and.
Not as many opportunities. All right, thank you, that's helpful.
There is one thing I wanted to point out about this. So just off the end of that parking lot, there's a tree that is a raptor nest site.
Which way?
To the west of the end of the parking lot. Yeah, right there. So just past the fence onto the Boulder County side property, there's a tree with a major raptor nest site in it.
Is that close
So-
to the trail?
It is, yeah, and near the ditch. So I would love for this to have as little impact on that as possible, and I don't know how to go about that, but it's just something that I learned about in starting this Raptor program and realized that it's there. So hopefully we can have as little impact on that and not disturb it.
Just right where the mouse is.
Roughly.
There's so on the north,
Near the dead, the big.
half the tree is dead. It's kind of a short, well, when you're going up McCaslin, it looks short because it's down a hill, kind of. You can see it really well from the downtown Superior is the best way to see it, but you can also see it just driving up McCaslin. There's also an old tree that's fallen down. That's kind of maybe just to the north of where we're gonna put this trailhead area, and you can see a bird sitting on that old tree. I'd love for that old tree to stay there if it can. That might even be it.
Yeah, and
right?
I think that there's a ditch, and then that tree, and this area is, and part of the site limitation, you can see that ditch, that it's like a historical ditch that's not in use anymore. But see, we just have that footprint that kind of is surrounded, you know, by the ditch.
So even though that's on Boulder County property, we are kind of watching that site and the birds and the activity there just to kind of get a feel for what's going on, knowing that this project is coming up.
Is it the one that's nearer McCaslin or the one that's further away? You know, Peter?
So I think it's actually a little farther to the west from where we're looking here.
I hope so. That would be good.
Yeah, keep going. Where's the irrigation?
No, it's not that far.
You're one switchback to.
It's gotta be that
Too far.
second tree, I think. I think it's that one. I really do.
Because this is where the old Shan Shan house was. So this is just up the hill from that.
So there might actually be two then. The one that I've been looking at is just immediately adjacent to the irrigation canal.
Yeah, that's the same one I'm thinking of. It's the one that we were looking at together that you pointed out to me.
So that's a little distance off from where we're proposing putting this, but still, it's still fairly close. It's not like right on it, but it's.
It is, and hopefully, you know, the birds are still there with all the construction that's been going on. There's a lot of activity
Is
with
there a time
wildlife
of
in that
year
area.
that's better? You know, I mean, because that could be
Definitely.
something we could do is try to
Definitely.
figure out the schedule. And, you know, as long as we have good weather, I mean, we have the whole year to complete the project.
Definitely.
I mean, maybe we can,
When is raptor nesting season usually? I know they close off over by Chautauqua around July, midsummer timeframe-ish, right, for raptor nesting.
Yeah, it's gonna be like around what, February through July is the possibility of when it could be. But no, they're not in there that whole time.
Right, but
And so that's another reason, you know, that's why Boulder monitors, because they monitor and find out exactly when
Oh, I see.
they're creating the nest and exactly when there's eggs and exactly when there's babies and decide on the closure times. Because it's different, it can vary through that season. So that's hopefully something we can identify, but it doesn't give us a lot of planning time.
well, if we know for sure, then, and, you know, we identify the contractor that's going to perform the work and get on their schedule early enough, you know, I mean, it wouldn't be out of the question. It just depends on schedule, weather, and then how long this can take, you know.
Late summer, fall would always be outside of the nesting season. Really midsummer.
Okay. Well, that is it on,
Public land.
oh, thank you, gosh, I don't have those in my
That's all right.
updates. Thank you for reminding me.
So Patrick, well, last month you guys touched on that they'd had some contact with Trust for Public Land, and Patrick just said that he had contact with them again. They're gonna reach out to CenturyLink, and they should get back in the next week or two. And then the questions I had were, Allison, do you happen to know the direction, if any direction was given to Trust for Public Land on Zaharias? Because at the board retreat, that was brought up by the board, and it was touched on with Kendra, the attorney, who said Trust for Public Land could reach out to the Zaharias family and see if there's any interest, because they are separate entities, meaning Superior and Trust for Public Land. It doesn't matter and is permissible. Where does that stand, do you know? Like, is that something they're going to do? Are they gonna wait? And because the last meeting I heard, wait until maybe spring 2019 and hear back on what's going on with Zaharias?
I haven't heard anything specifically on Zaharias, but I seem to remember that there was like monetary amounts that Trust for Public Land was interested
$1 million.
in. I'm sorry?
$1 million, like, for the property?
Yeah.
definitely.
And so I don't remember, was Zaharias over $1 million
Oh, yeah.
for
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Yes.
7, it's like close to 7.
Oh, it was that, yeah. I haven't really heard anything.
Okay.
I just remember that there was like a dollar amount and then it
Yeah.
had to meet their criteria.
So I'm wondering, I have a couple more questions on TPL. I'm wondering how I should follow. Should I just email you and you can siphon it to Patrick, and then I can give a more accurate update next month, maybe?
Sure.
Would that be better? Because I'm wondering about some other properties, because almost all the properties we look at now are $1 million. If they communicated on that, if there's any plan to communicate on that, and kind of the communication loop that we can have with town staff, so as we're not burdening you and nagging you all the time, like I feel like we're doing.
No, I just,
but we
if
can
I don't
stay
have the information.
updated, you know,
Yeah.
on what's going on. So maybe I'll just send it to you in an email, and we can follow up next month. Does that work?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, awesome.
So there was one more, is the PROS newsletter bullet items. Definitely we'll add something about the National Day of Service. We have good data on that. We can add a good thing in there, or a nice write-up on there.
I do, just a quick thing on
sure.
the bullets. Last month, we had Chili Fest. We kind of inundated everybody with a lot of marketing. Then we had National Day of Service. So we'll be putting out our typical newsletter soon.
Oh, so the last that we did.
Right,
will
and I
suffice.
updated the bullets, and I also put in a big blurb for National Weekend of Service with
Perfect.
like more of our information already in a
Yeah, so-
separate blurb, and then I have our bullets that I kind of tweaked with tents, just because,
Sure,
you know.
yeah, what happened, yeah.
And so what's gonna happen is I'm, just thinking about the bullets for the next one will be November.
But
So
usually
it kind of
early
ends up pushing
November.
us back a month because of Chili Fest and all of
Okay.
our.
No, that's great.
gearing
So we'll
up for
just
that.
use those and we'll come up with the next ones next time. And we've got some good things.
Right.
About the ecological study might be ready.
Right.
Having this concept, having the concept of this short and long term, or the fact that we're gonna review the properties, update the open space summary report again next year. I think we'll have plenty, so.
And then we'll also have work plan.
No, yeah, well, yes. I think it'll be pretty easy to get through that. I don't know, say that every year, but we put a lot of time into that, so it'll be good. Okay, well, meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much, appreciate it. And don't forget your hats. Love it.
Tracy, I want to see you wear your hat.
Marcy, welcome to your first official one. Official. Getting through.